What is up, Facebook land? Timothy Wenger here from The Man Effect, bringing you the 7th live interview. Guys, I am so excited, and gals, for today's interview. Oh, it's been a long week for me, a long life, but I am excited. So, my friend Tom should be joining me here shortly. Just saying what's up to everyone. What's up, Matthew? Thanks for watching, Nick. Glad you could see. Hey, Evan, what's up? All right, here comes. There he is. What's up, Tom?
Made it. Good to be here.
We did it. We got here.
Did it.
Dude, how do you say your last name?
Yeah.
Say it one more time.
Zuniga.
Zuniga. Dang.
Or if you want to be daring, you can pronounce it the Spanish way, which is Zuniga.
Yeah.
So you could do it that.
No,
too.
definitely not.
You have to like roll a little bit. All right, cool. I see names that I can recognize, so I feel like, okay, so people that I know are here. That's really cool.
Good. Hey, everyone, real quick, while you're tuning in, I'm just going to jump and share this in a group and a page. So while I'm doing that, Tom, could you just introduce yourself and kind of who you are and what you do?
My name is Tom. I also go by
Tom! Oh, my gosh. Sorry.
I also go by Thomas Mark Zuniga. I've written a couple books, memoirs, and I'm currently the co-founder and editor of a website called Your Other Brothers, yourotherbrothers.com. And I edit blog posts and I produce podcasts a couple times a month. And we're starting to do video production too. And it's all about talking about sexuality and faith and masculinity and tying it all together because they're all complicating, heavy subjects. So,
wow.
And they're usually well in the church where I'm frequenting. So it's fun to talk about those nitty gritty things that people don't want to talk about.
Dude, that's awesome, man. And how long have you been doing this?
We started our site in late 2015, so almost 2.5 years now. It's kind of crazy. It's taking on a life.
Dude, did it take over your life? You just started it kind of like as a resource for men, and then all of a sudden it's just like everything?
It was like literally just me and my friends decided we would start blogging.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, our first month or so, we had like 10 or 15 people reading. And so that was great. It was our nice little hobby.
Dude.
And yeah, hobby quickly turned into, basically a career now, because this is what I'm doing with, I wouldn't say full time, but like 3/4 time. A lot of my life every day is spent on doing and planning podcasts and shooting videos and just connecting with our followers. We have a really faithful following, and a lot of them are watching right now. So I want to give shout outs to all of them. But yeah, it's taken on a life of its own that I wouldn't have ever expected. And I'm kind of humbled and grateful.
That's awesome. Nick just said, welcome to the wild world of content marketing. So true.
Marketing.
It just takes you over, man. It's like, just eats you. Just want to say what's up to everyone tuning in. Drop in the comments where you're watching from, or just say something cool. If you like my beard or not, I don't know. Be nice if you don't.
Well, if we could do a beard swap in this video. I used to have a beard as long as I took a trip. You can sort of see it. I took a road trip around the country a few years ago. I just didn't shave for 9 months, and my beard was about where yours is. I don't know how long it takes to get to where you are, but it took me 9 months.
Nice. I don't know how long I've been growing it, but it's been fun.
It's been a while.
Doug says it needs to be trimmed. All right, Thomas or Tom? Which one do you prefer?
For the sake of a conversation, most people just know me by Tom. Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready? Do you need to stretch? Do you need to take a deep breath, get a glass of water?
I'll stretch. It's good to stretch. But yeah, I'm ready to roll.
All right. Cool. Well, so the first question I ask everyone is, if you were to describe what it means to be a man in one word, what would it be and why?
Okay, so one word. I only get one word, and they're cheating on this?
You can describe why, but yes, one word.
Yeah.
And what's up, Lee? Thanks for tuning in. Sorry.
Yeah, the first one always comes to mind. I think about lots of things. I think about physical attributes. I think about emotional attributes. I think about the combination of both.
Yeah.
And so I figure out a word that tries to sum it all up, both aspects, physical, emotional, of course, other aspects too of humanity. But the word that I always come back to over again and again is responsible. And responsible can mean taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, taking care of your finances, taking care of your emotions, basically managing yourself well, and not only yourself, but the ones around you. So your circle of friends, if you have a wife, if you have kids, if you have whoever your inner circle is, tending to their needs as well. So I think covers it pretty well for me. And responsibility has just been a huge theme of my life over the last 30 years. So responsible is responsibility. That's one that I just always resonate with.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's up, Jacob and Summer? Thanks for tuning in, and everyone else who's watching. So
hello, everyone.
So Tom, I'm curious. Do you think the most masculine roles in your life, figures in your life, masculine figures, were responsible and displayed that to you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my first person that I think of is my dad. He's very, I mean, hopefully if I've learned any responsibility, I've learned a ton from my dad. He's just like, he works hard. He never complains about the work that he does, and he supports his family. And from a young age, like responsible from a spiritual standpoint, was like very faithful about like making sure we went to church and did this father-son program and bonded at father-son program. We went camping, went on hikes, and yeah, just like that course of his life and managing finances to managing just time spent with us was very intent. Also, like taking us on vacations and spending time together. We did a lot of family bonding on like trips to the beach and trips to go camping and stuff like that. So that's like my first person immediately that I think of as my dad. And then even then, my grandfather, just like, again, super responsible. I think a lot about him because my grandfather had 9 kids.
Oh my gosh, 9?
Yeah. So I had a lot of aunts, uncles, and cousins, and my grandfather was like always sitting at the top, and like he is kind of a running joke is that he always had to like literally know where everybody was like geographically at all times. And so like when he traveling here, traveling there, he'd give us a call or give me a call like when I was an adult, and he would need to know like, where are you? What's going on? How are you doing? Are you okay? And just like, not only to himself, but he's just like very others minded and cares about his kids and his grandkids, and that's super inspiring as far as masculinity and manhood goes.
That's awesome. That's cool that you
What's up, Jay?
Oh yeah. There's Jay's jumping on here. We gotta love Jay. Josh Payne, what is up? Joshua Mondragon? I don't know how to say your last name. What's up, man? Thanks for tuning in. Dude, so this is what I'm curious about is like if those two like figures that you just brought up, right? Your father and your grandfather, if they weren't in your life, do you think responsibility would be an important role in your life?
That's a good question because I was certainly blessed growing up to have both of them in my life and both of them be active in my life as well, on top of just having them there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I would have picked up on responsibility and tending. Like, I don't know. Like, I unconsciously, subconsciously picked up, I think, a lot just being academically astute. My grandfather was valedictorian of his high school. I was valedictorian of my high school. And so I was just like always just academically responsible. I knew when I had to get things done, homework and tests and speeches and presentations and book reports and all that. Like, I just always had it locked down. So even just from a basic academic, scholastic standpoint, I had that responsibility hardwired into me, and that's sort of translated areas as well. So I don't think I would be, I mean, granted, there's always the opportunity to grow as an adult and to overcome whatever you didn't have as a child, but I think, it would have been a harder journey to get there for sure without that foundation in my life.
Interesting. Doug is actually asking real quick. He's curious, what do the symbols mean behind your head?
Oh yeah, I was hoping someone might talk. So your other brother have 5 values. We recently redid our website a few months ago after being around for years, and so we came up with 5 values that we hold dear, and we have them symbolized by these 5 symbols. And so in order, I have to do it backwards because it's on the camera, but we have hope and humility, brotherhood, courage and vulnerability.
Okay.
And various scripture references that go with each one and correspond to the symbol. And we have a write-up on our About page if people want to dive into what those mean exactly. You just go to yourotherbrothers.com/about and you can read all about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're with and having a fun time doing with. We're actually in the middle of a video series. I'm doing a video on each one. So I just did a video on brotherhood. And so I've got two more to go.
Very
cover
cool.
all of them. But it's fun.
Huh. So the statement you were making earlier about just the importance and role that your grandfather and father played in your life really makes me think about a belief that I have about the classic, that verse that goes, worry about the plank in your own eye before the speck in your brother's. I feel like a lot of my experience of people in the industry of trying to change masculinity or encourage it have done a lot to try to influence other people, but not really work on themselves. And so I'm curious, in your process, what are some things that have been really transformational in doing your own work? Like, what are some things that have been like, wow, like the plank out of your own eye kind of thing?
Yeah, planks. I have had many planks over the last 3 decades. I would say vulnerability. That's something I had to really work out because I was such a quiet. Externally, I took care of my business, and I was like, like I said, I took care of my studies. I was a great student and ran cross country and track. Kept in shape. Wasn't obese or anything like that. So I checked all the boxes externally, but internally I was like a mess because I kept all these secrets and I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't tell anyone my problems. My parents didn't really have many friends. Certainly didn't have any close friends in high school and even college for that matter. So vulnerability has been probably the biggest piece, learning to learn that it's because I think, I don't want to blame culture because I have to own my own stuff, but like that's something that I saw on TV and film. Like, guys don't talk about their feelings. They don't talk about what's going on in their lives. They, they man up and they play sports and they bump chess out and they watch football and that's all they talk about. They only talk about sports. And so I just never saw that really modeled and didn't see that a place, an avenue, an outlet for me to talk about feelings and feeling, whether I'm just because I'm an introvert or talking about my sexuality or talking about faith and talking about trying to like start a new stuck where I was growing up in Georgia and I wanted a new start. And so all these things just kind of festered and I was alone and certainly didn't have like strong men in my life as friends, peer group to support me as well. So vulnerability has been the biggest piece to learn that it is manly to talk about your feelings. It's quite manly actually, because it's again responsible. You're taking care of those things instead of sweeping them under the rug.
Who inspired you to be vulnerable? Like, who displayed that for you?
So I have, I definitely have some friends. I made some friends, this whole blog that we started, met some friends on this blogging network, like literally a decade ago. It was 2008. And that was the first time I started anonymously sharing my story with these other anonymous figures who are also sharing the faith and sexuality and masculinity. And so that was my first dipping my toes in the water of talking about these things that I'd kept hidden for 21 years.
Yeah.
Like that kind of jump started the process. And then over the years, like I discovered blogs. Donald Miller is an influential author that I fell in love with, just writings and how open and involved he was. There's another blogger named Max Dubinsky who I found a blog post where he talked about his struggle with pornography. And I had seen, and he's a Christian, and I had never seen a Christian talk about their struggle with pornography, name and their picture and their bio attached. Like I had never seen that before. He was so raw about it. So definitely in the world of writing, I have these authors and bloggers who have been instrumental in helping me realize, okay, this is something that can be talked about. And it was a slow journey of being anonymous at first, putting myself out there more and more and more. And then that translated to real life and talking to friends and talking to family. And eventually led to a point where I always tell people my life is a literal open book because I've written books. Talk about some really uncomfortable things, and I'm kind of just learning to be okay with it at this point.
Yeah. Just want to say hey to everyone that's tuning in. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions while we're talking, feel free to comment, and I'll try to get to them. I think that's a really interesting journey, though, Tom. it's almost like you weaned yourself into what you actually needed. And
Yeah,
I
something
find
like
I find that really fascinating. Um, for people who don't know, your target audience is Christian males, essentially, correct? For the most
yeah,
part.
Christian. So our first, like when we first started our blog 2.5 years ago, our like target demo
Hmm.
was like Christian males 18 to 38,
Okay.
39. And primarily, I mean, at the beginning, it was 100% really 100% Christian males
Hmm.
who some wrestling with their sexuality or gender identity.
Hmm.
That was
That's.
their target demo.
Hmm.
And then over the years, it's been cool to start to hear. I mean, we're still a predominantly Christian-based audience, but it's cool to now hear from like pastors, and I've heard from parents
Hmm.
and people who are connected to people they know. I
Hmm.
mean, because really, at some point, I think we all know somebody with sexuality and gender identity issues that they're confronting or wrestling, or they figured it out and they're moving forward in a new chapter in their lives. So
Hmm.
now to see it start to zoom out a little bit, like our core
Yeah.
audience is still what it was, but it's starting to zoom out a little bit, and it's really inspiring to hear from
Mm.
the others, who are finding our site and finding just at least empathy and understanding with these stories that don't get talked about a whole lot, especially within Christianity.
Mm. What's up, Greg? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, that's really interesting. Ron, the topic today is that Tom is super cool and runs a blog, and I just wanted to pick his brain. That's the topic of today. uh, so Tom, let me ask you this: Why? Like, why take the time, devote your time to trying to help other men who are emotionally boxed in or filled with condemnation and shame? Like, why you? Like, why should you be the one doing this? I know it's a little
I,
aggressive, but why?
I ask myself that often. I don't want to say every day. I ask myself that. Um, yeah, to be honest, like I am super introverted and I feel one of my biggest core struggles is inferiority and incapability. I honestly don't feel capable of a whole lot. You know, I can learn to take responsibility, and I think I've learned responsibility over the years. But as far as like leading a charge, being a leader, that's
Mm,
like totally new ground to me. I've never led anything. Like I'm leading this community of guys who are blogging, and we
mm,
have over 100 supporters, and we have like, all these things going on with podcasts and blogs and videos. And so I'm like constantly, every once in a while, I catch my breath and I'm like, what is going on? How did I get here? Why am I doing this? Why is nobody else doing this? And I think that's what I always come back to, is that nobody else is quite doing what we're doing with your other brothers.
mm,
And that was a realization we came to when we launched the site 3 summers ago.
mm,
Um, it all found each other. Me and my friends found each other on this anonymous blogging network and
mm,
found such inspiration in finding other people who are similar and battling similar things and trying to navigate these matters of
mm.
faith and sexuality. And so when that anonymous blogging
Oh,
network shut down in 2015,
mm-hmm,
there was this void where a couple years went by, and this was in 2015 when we started the blog. We just kind of gathered together. We literally gathered in the same room because we're, we
mm,
have a bunch of friends. So we gathered together in the same room somewhere in the country one summer and just kind of had this morning and this like introspection time of like, wow, what are people out there doing now? Like people who wrestled with the same things we did and want to find
yeah,
some connected
yep,
stories, the pornography struggles or homosexuality or gender identity or whatever these like nitty gritty things are within the church. Like, what are they finding? They're finding like maybe forums, or maybe they're finding organizations, maybe they're finding more scholastic or theological sources, but they're not finding narratives. They're not finding story, like just basic stories. And at our
mm,
core, like what there is that we were all storytellers of some sort.
mm-hmm,
Um, love telling our stories, and there's just simple. There's nothing. There's no like grand scheme to it. All we're doing is journaling for other people to read and comment on
uh-huh,
this other network too. So yeah, we saw a void, and for me particularly, I've always wanted to be an author and write books. That's always just been a core desire. Like I've written journals
mm,
and books since I was a little kid. So this has always been a career path in some sense of the word that I always write. I just didn't know what that translated into. Moving into adulthood, and so I saw a void, and I kind of took it upon myself to set up a domain and set up a website. And I have my friend Elliot, who does graphic design. He's extremely talented in graphic design. He did all these symbols, and
yeah,
anything you see on the site visually is from him. So between him and I, like we kind of headed up the logistics of starting the site, and then the other guys have jumped in and blogged and appeared on podcasts and other things along the way. But
yeah,
yeah, ultimately, sense that no one else is doing what we're doing, so I guess we should do it. And we just stepped into it, and that's kind of how it. And yeah, I still feel like I'm not the man for the job, but my pastor has told me, or he just had, yeah, told me over lunch one day that, if you feel like you're not the man for the job, it's usually a pretty good sign that you are. So I'm trying to just with it and exhibit a little humility and just trust. And so far it's been, taking me on a crazy journey.
Do you care about the emotional health of men?
Yeah, totally.
Why?
Emotional health. Because I think, there's that unconscious belief that men are fine, like you just cover it up and everything will be great. But you can only cover things up for so long before things erupt and explode or spew out in some way. And so emotional maintenance, emotional responsibility, that is super important to me. And that's something, that goes beyond issues of sexuality and faith. Like that just goes to issues of being a man. Like everyone has, and we need to tend to them regularly. Otherwise they are going to spiral at some point.
So someone who's not a male who's not engaged with his emotions at this point in life, what would be 2 or 3 steps just to get started?
It's interesting because I've worked over the last couple of years before I dived full time into Your Other Brothers and writing. The last few years I've been working with at-risk youth in both wilderness therapy and a therapeutic boarding school.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of the core things that these kids, which was totally a total blindside to me, a lot of the basic things that these kids are working on, and most of the guys I worked with were like 13 to 17-year-old boys. And some of them, especially at the school I worked at, some of them had drug and alcohol addiction related. But a core thing that they all worked on from wilderness therapy to the boarding school was figuring out your emotions and being able to process them and being able to handle them and analyze them and communicate them to other people. Because a lot of being in both of these environments was teamwork and being able to resolve conflict both with other people and with yourself. And like we had I have it somewhere in my room. We had a feelings wheel. So you would have like your 6 core emotions, like fear and anger and joy and, all of them. And then they would get more and more specific the further out you go from the wheel.
Yep.
And so a lot of kids, they're so out of tune with their emotions, and they literally would have sessions where they would have to like put their finger like on a spoke of the wheel and then keep getting more and more specific, try to figure out what they're feeling and why. And that was so foreign to me. I am as emotional as they come. I am super emotional and super sensitive, and I'm like gripping emotion at all times. So I constantly know I'm sad or I'm angry or I'm lonely or I'm like, not really, I've never had to think quite my entire life about what I'm feeling or why. Like it's pretty easy to point to why I'm feeling those things too. But I realized, like, looking at these kids in the face, and as they're trying to figure out why are they sad, why are they angry, why are they feeling these basic human emotions, and a lot of that could be maybe chemistry and brain wiring got interrupted by drugs and alcohol. Like that's certainly part of it, but a lot of it too is just being young, and you're 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, and you're trying to figure out how to process your emotions. And so and journaling is a huge aspect of that. So I'm like a huge journaler. So something I would recommend people, anyone, like whether they're a teenager or a 47-year-old man, journaling your emotions, journaling your experiences, trying to dive a little deeper, like that's huge. And like I've never been in therapy or counseling myself, but I've had numerous friends who, like, for people who have trouble asking themselves those questions, those hard questions, and trying to nail down why. Like I know therapy and counseling can go a long way to like pry and dig a little deeper than maybe you're on your own. But it depends. Like, for me, I've never been uncomfortable diving deeper into my emotions because I live there all the time. But I know some people aren't, and that's something that maybe some other people need to take more initiative with. And that's just humanity and the diversity of our personalities and how we're all.
Yeah. So kind of what I hear you saying essentially is that if you want to start growing and being more emotionally aware, it would be through journaling or just trying to verbalize what you're feeling. Am I hearing you correct? I just kind of want to summarize it for everyone that's listening.
Yeah. The written word and the spoken word, those are powerful things. And so, and even if, you have close friends and you have like serious check-in times with other people, and you have someone who can ask you nitty-gritty questions, and you can ask them nitty-gritty questions in return.
Yeah.
I think that goes along for sure to process your emotions and to healthily walk through them.
Yeah. I know for me personally, when I was given the vocabulary of sad, angry, scared, happy, excited, tender, those 6 words, um, I was able to articulate the very emotions that I didn't know I was having, right? And so that allowed me, when I learned that it was A, okay to have those emotions, but B, that was a 6 kind of categories, let's just say. Um, that really opened the door for me personally as a man to communicate to my close friends, I'm really angry today, and this is why, or I'm tender because of this, or I'm sad because of this. It opened a door for me. So for me personally, that was a huge starting point.
Absolutely.
So I love that you had very similar experience with. I like that wheel. I know what wheel you're talking about.
Yeah, feels great. There's a lot of variations of one. The kids would have fun with them. There was one version of the wheel. I have no idea what category it was under. It might have been joy. It must have been joy. But there was one subcategory that said sexy, like I'm feeling sexy today. That was kids would always at that one, especially at the school that I worked at. They would say, "I'm feeling sexy today." Cool. Good. Good. I guess that's a valid. So
That's awesome.
sometimes we without sexy just to be less controversial because sometimes the kids just would joke about that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for everyone, if you don't know what wheel he's talking about, you can just go in to Google and type in the emotions wheel, essentially, and it'll bring up this wheel the diagram, essentially, that
Yeah,
will
I
tell
like
you.
has colors. It's like color coordinated, so you'll see like yellow, red, blue, green, and they all yeah, it gets more and more specific the further out
Yeah.
that you go.
And I think personally, I've been writing and it's my belief that it's good to check in with a close friend at least 3 to 5 times a week, like if you
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
especially at the beginning of your journey, to help you learn to take to grow an awareness of where you're at. So, um, man, okay. You got anything else on that? Or are you ready to jump into the next one?
let's keep jumping. I'm ready.
Okay. How do you think women can help support the emotional growth of men without being overbearing?
Oh man, I'm so like entrenched in like dealing with men that I always forget. Oh yeah, women exist. Women exist too. Um, yeah, it's because I think women. I mean, I think it does come more naturally to them that they'll talk about their feelings and talk about how they're doing. Um,
Yeah.
and I think there's yeah the whole notion that if a woman asks how a man's doing, it could appear nagging or overbearing.
Hmm.
And there's a fine line there. I think. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think it's good for women to encourage men to find other men that they can be vulnerable with,
Hmm.
to just encourage the good thing. Because a lot of times, like for me, I'm just going to speak for myself. Like I don't feel comfortable sharing with women what I'll share with my with my male friends. And I feel like most males are
Yeah.
probably that way.
Yeah.
They're a lot of these deeper, darker things with a woman, whether it's their spouse or whoever. But there is like a sacredness and a safety with a close male friend, a fellow male friend. And I think so for a woman who, because I know there are some women who like, especially maybe with husbands, like they want to know everything that's going on in their husband's life, every
Yeah.
nitty gritty thing. We actually just did a podcast with a married couple, and they were actually very open about their journey and their story of accountability and
Mm.
trust and keep secrets from each other. And they were high school sweethearts and they've been together 14 years um,
Hmm.
and they tell each other and it works for them. Like I'm listening to their story, I'm like, oh my gosh, like they literally talk about everything, like when they looked at pornography or when they did this or when they did that or when this person has a doubt over something or a fear over something, and they drop everything they're doing and they talk about it, and that's
Yeah.
worked for them. And I think I don't know that it's necessarily a template for every single marriage that there's constantly 100% communication at all times, but at the very least, they both agreed that it's important for the male to have solid male friends in his life, and it's important for the female to have solid female friendships in her
Mm.
life. And so I think to encourage those same sex friendships, and if for whatever reason or whatever the issue is, if there's something that can't be communicated from man to woman, at least encouraging that communication with another man, or encouraging vice versa. And so I would say, yeah, some sort of leniency that, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to necessarily tell a woman everything that you're feeling, but if we can have sacredness among same-sex friendships and have that space to be vulnerable with other, I think that's huge.
It makes me think about, though, what about like a single mom, let's just say, right? And she wants to help her son grow up to be a good man, right? But she doesn't want to pry into his life or all of that. Like, she wants to have good boundaries with him. Or let's just say a sister who knows like her parents aren't involved with her brother, but she wants to just help push him towards becoming a more whole man. Kind of what I hear you saying also includes them, is just to help encourage men to find good close friends to be authentic and open with. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think women can absolutely play some role in connecting with men vulnerable and talking about things. But yeah, in the case of a single mom or an older sister, I think they can start the process. They can start cranking the wheel of vulnerability and start just like on a general basis, like, how are you doing? And maybe digging a little bit. But yeah, encouraging those mentor figures or those fellow peers who can support you, I think that's huge. And it's something that I can clearly point to in my upbringing. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, I just didn't have that. I didn't have an older brother. An older brother is like my biggest longing in life. I've always wanted, I'm an oldest child. I've always wanted an older brother to just lead me along, and someone that I can look up to for advice and confess things to, and just, be supported by. And I long for that, both biologically and also just as in a peer, like having someone, call it a best friend, call it a mentor, call it whatever you want, but just someone that is like my go-to person that I can go to and open up my soul to and not be turned away. And I think that's huge. It's amazing when kids have that from a young age. Like, that's huge. That's amazing. And I know I'm probably blessed more than most, because I mentioned my grandfather and my father earlier, and they're great people. I struggled to connect vulnerably. That was like the missing piece when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, it's very common. Very common.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think if kids can find that today, that's a huge foundation moving forward.
Ron is asking, he's like, do you think it's hard for men to relate for women to relate because of their sex, or is it sometimes he's just saying he feels blah and doesn't know how to convey his own emotions? What do you think about that? What would you say to Ron about that?
Yeah. I mean, I resonate with that. There are some women that I can share a lot with, but there's no woman in my life that I can share what I would share with my male friends. Like, there's just not. I can't talk about those types of things. I can maybe give a general synopsis of what I'm going through to my close female friends, but yeah, there's just I don't know what it is. Maybe it's different for various people, but for me personally, I agree with Ron. Like, I feel blah too about sharing like a lot of nitty-gritty things with various women in my life. And I'm not dating anyone. I don't have a wife. I don't have like that kind of a female relationship. So I don't know which kind of relationship he's talking about. But yeah, as far as my close female friends go, like, I can tell them some things, but I can't tell them. Just there's no other way around it.
I think practically there's a really simple way to look at it, in the sense that, like, as a homeowner, like, you don't expect, or you don't go to your electrician for plumbing issues, and you don't go to your plumber for roofing issues, right? And so I think in friendship, I think there's a really great way that I've observed that I go to certain friends for certain things. And so I think that's very similar to the fact that it's learning to know what you can and can't relate to with your significant other, your sister, your mom, but they are a valuable asset and a valuable part of your life. That's kind of like, that's how I picture it in my head, I know, at least. So
yeah, we all have circles of friends and circles of relationships. And so females might be in one circle and males are in another. And then within males, you have like your general friends and you have your close friends. And maybe you tell more to your general male friends than you do to your close female friends. Like, I don't know, everyone's circle is going to be different, but it's important to know like who's in which circle. Like, it's been huge for me. It's kind of annoying to categorize people. Like, people are against labels and categories and all that. But I mean, super helpful to know who is in my circle. Like, who can I go to in a crisis or in a moment of desperation, or just like, yeah, for regular check-ins throughout the week. Like, it's good to know who those people are and have those communication. That goes such a long way when you're trying to navigate through when the hard times do come, if you're just trying to get by day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, over the last 3 years, so we'll go just before you started your project, how much has your perspective changed about masculinity?
Whew, yeah, I'm definitely seeing that masculinity, so much more dynamic and layered and nuanced, and there's so much more to it than I ever thought. A lot of that with these values that we put together, but yeah, I think tending to all these different spheres of our lives, our physical beings, our spiritual beings, our emotional and mental and relational health, we have all these different categories in our lives. And being a man, like, yeah, being responsible, being vulnerable, having open communication and analyzing, feeling, and everything you're doing, like, it's an ongoing process. It really never ends. Like, again, it's so simplistic on TV. It's just like, oh yeah, you're a man, so therefore you do this. You like sports. You're the opposite of the spectrum. You're down, you fall. And what I'm learning is, yeah, it's just so much deeper than that. We're not cartoon characters. We're real people with real emotions. And I'm just like, maybe I'm just more emotions than most. Maybe some people are out there screaming, like, just deal with it. Like, okay, so what? You have emotions. Like, stop being so sad all the time. Or I just have a naturally melancholic personality, and so I tend to maybe dwell on the sadder things. But yeah, I think eventually, like, we all have emotions, and so tending to those emotions and talking about them with others, like, that's a huge part of the masculine journey, and one I wish that, yeah, I had experienced 20 years ago instead of, like, in the last couple of years, relatively speaking.
So I like what Ron just said. He just said that he was taught by his uncle to every 5 years reevaluate and reinvent himself. I think that's some really interesting advice. I find that fascinating.
Yeah. Every 5 years, that's a good pattern for my life. I can see myself changing every 5 or 6. That seems consistent.
I don't even know who I was 7 years ago. So I mean, yeah, it's the process is really fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to know as well, like, as you've started to kind of get your, let's just say, tentacles, right? You're kind of starting to make a network and get out there in this realm. What is your experience in that? Do you feel the hunger or the need for masculinity to be kind of nurtured in some ways? Like, what is your experience around that? Like, are men really hungry for answers, or are they just kind of shut down? What are other people doing? Like, just kind of the general sense. Like, how are you feeling as you've kind of gotten out there further?
Yeah, I mean, brotherhood, so that's our center symbol. We have it symbolized by a knot, and there's a verse in Ecclesiastes about a threefold cord that isn't easily broken. I think we're all looking for those 2 or 3 people in our lives who can be with us, can be literally and metaphorically be knotted up with us in our struggles, in our conversations, in our vulnerabilities, in our strengths, and our weaknesses. And so what I'm learning in this community is that, yeah, it goes far beyond, like, these core initial issues of faith and sexuality. That's mainly what draws people to our site. I think there's a much deeper core hunger other than just confusion and trying to figure out life and figure out journeys. I think there is, just a basic desire to connect and to have a safe place to connect. A lot of people in our community have had issues resonating and connecting with people, whether it's at church or support groups or family dynamics, whatever, what have you. Being able to find that safe circle of people that they can just absolutely be raw and completely vulnerable with. And that's something that I'm just noticing, because I still feel it now. I mean, I feel like I'm in a better place with people in my life today than I was 10 years ago when I started blogging. But I remember that so years ago when I was a junior, I think, sophomore or junior in college, when I started blogging anonymously, and and yeah, I just had nobody. I had nobody that I could be real with, like, at all.
Mm.
And so it was so refreshing to be able to find that on an internet
Mm.
blog that no longer exists. But yeah, that was my journey, and I'm still plugging away. It's still a journey. It doesn't just you never just quite figure it out, and it's just like all in place. You have to constantly be retuning and refueling and
Mm.
rediscovering what works and what doesn't work, and who's in your life, and the people in my life today versus the people in my life 10 years ago. Like, it's changed so much in 10 years as I've
Mm.
moved multiple
Yep.
times, and people on the internet that have come and gone from my life, and
Yep.
um, the circles change, and so you're constantly retuning and refiguring out, okay, who am I vulnerable with, who's on this circle and who's on that circle, and
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, we're all trying to find our brotherhood as men. I think that's, whether we realize it or not, I think we're all trying to connect with something. We're all searching for connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really curious to know from everyone who's watching, like, is is this is this touching? Like, is this making sense? Are you able to engage with the fact that, like, there's a hunger out there? Um, I find it really interesting, your journey, Tom. Like, and just from going from being anonymous to being completely open. Like, that is, oh my gosh, it's
Yeah,
so
interesting
funny
is
to
one
me.
word you use for that. But yeah, and that's what's been great about our community following. We have, I don't know how
Mm.
other, like, I've poked around a little bit as far as Patreon, which is a content creation, sort of like Kickstarter, but people can monthly pledge and support content creators, so
Yeah.
whatever they're creating. I don't know how other Patreons work, but, like, I don't know, our group is really fantastic. We have over 100 people who are, like, not only believe in what we're doing, but believe in this core value of brotherhood, and like, we have a Facebook group, and we have connection times, and it's really inspiring to me
Mm.
to see them together, because I had no concept of, like, a community of over 100 men, and who knows what that number will be a year from now or 5 years from now,
Yeah.
but yeah, over 100 guys who are, like, who have that hunger. It's so evident here that yeah, there is this need to connect with other men, and that's a good thing. It's not something to be afraid of. It's not something that's weird. It's a good thing to hunger for, and it's a good thing to pursue.
Mm. Mm. Hmm. Ron's asking you another question for you, so let's jump in with that one. He's curious to know, have you noticed that men and masculinity is threatened by the norm today? Like, that to be a real man is this fox pass? I don't know what that means, but
Yeah, I mean, I think we're making progress. I mean, I can't point to specific things like in pop culture or things that are displayed. I think I
mm.
see more examples of, like, sensitive men and quiet men, and
Mm.
more relatable men, certainly to my personality today, than 20 years ago as a kid. And I don't know, like, I'd like to think that people are waking up and that they're realizing that there's more layers and dynamics to manliness and manhood. I'd like to think
Mm.
that.
Hmm.
And I'd like to think something that we're doing, just like telling our stories as we are. I'd like to think that's making, like, a drip in the bucket, and we're adding our adding our perspective of manliness and manhood, and just like
Hmm.
what you're doing, like what you're doing with the Man Effect. Like, I'd like to think that these little movements that are coming up, like, that it's making a difference. It really is, like,
Absolutely.
one story at a time. Like, we have to be consistent and keep putting our stories out there. But I absolutely believe it's making a difference.
Mm. Hmm. I love it. I'm I know I'm personally always trying to connect with other men who are doing things. And I think that's originally kind of why I reached out to you. I was talking to someone who referred me to your website, and I was like, man, I just love it when I can connect and find other men who have chosen to no longer just sit in their chair and watch, but actually do. And so I just want
Yeah,
to commend you on that, because I know creating content can be extremely taxing and can take a lot of work. And so just want to acknowledge and affirm that. Like, dude, love
I
that.
appreciate I appreciate everything you're doing too. Like, everything, the videos, the photography. I mean, it's really inspiring to see other guys who get it. There's, like, they've
Mhm.
woken up and realized that we need to start
Yeah,
talking about this. See other people talking about, and start
yeah.
diving into what is masculinity, what really is it, and figure it out and share with each other. So I appreciate that for sure.
Thanks, man. So I'm really curious. God, I'm saying that a lot today. I want to know, all right? I want to know, what would you say to someone who is ashamed of their emotions, specifically men, right? So they've had a lot of emotions their whole life. They've been told you're a useless piece of shit, like you need to get rid of that, like just man up, toughen up. What would you say to the man who's been ashamed of his emotions his whole life?
Yeah, my heart goes out to someone like that because I've been super blessed when I've opened up to people. I've never been like rejected. I've never really been turned away. Like when I started being real about my journey, like with my parents, it
Mm-hmm.
started with my parents. You know, they welcomed me with open arms, and there were tears everywhere, but it was like a super loving
Mm.
family. Then I would eventually start talking more and more with my brother and sister, and from there it expanded to my best friend and other friends and other mentor type figures. And so I don't know, like I just my heart goes out to people in those types of situations where there's shame for maybe a very real reason, like maybe there is this fear of rejection from a parent or
Yeah.
from a brother or from a best friend or from a spouse or whoever. Um, yeah, I would say, I mean, the first thing I would say is that you're not alone. Like that's like our core mantra over and over and over, not only with
Mm.
issues of just yeah, and issues of masculinity. Like you're not alone in feeling shame and fear and isolation
Yeah.
and like anything. Like there's the list goes on. Like these are emotions and feelings common across the spectrum, across faiths, across cultures, across
Yeah.
people groups. Everyone experiences emotions, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
and so yeah, the process. Like I'm still on this process myself is finding wisdom and figuring out who are safe people in your life to talk about these things with, because there are legitimately people that aren't safe and you can't
Mm-hmm.
talk to. So it's a matter of yeah, prayer and getting advice and talking, yeah, just slowly like putting yourself out there in small ways maybe at first, and then maybe figuring out who's safe, testing the waters, and then hopefully if they reciprocate you can dive a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my first thing. You're not alone. Like other men are constantly feeling these things, inferiority complexes and lack of whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. To answer just a couple questions too, real quick, I will be posting a link to his website and any ways to get in touch with Tom after this video is published, and all of that other links we've talked about, if we do talk about any other ones. I think that's really good though, Tom. Like, start small and feel people out. There's so many times I've watched myself and men around me get really hurt because it was misplaced vulnerability, right? Like they opened up and someone just destroyed them, right? It could be an ex-girlfriend, it could be a father, it could be whoever. Um, I do know though, and I'm assuming you've experienced this from what you've already said, and I know for myself, finding friends who I can be vulnerable and open with has changed my life. And so
Yeah,
it's worth the journey, it's worth the risk to slowly get out there and just keep looking, don't give up, and poke around and see if people are open to it or not. Like,
life. Going back to high school when nobody knew me, like nobody knew the real me. On the one hand, it was definitely safer. Like it was more comfortable to just not bring up nitty gritty awful things with other people, and it was
mhm,
for 10, 20 years. That's how my life played out. But yeah, I reached a point where there's just like such an emptiness and such a disconnect where it just builds and builds and builds and builds.
mm,
And like eventually it's like you kind of have to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself what it means to be alive and why are we even here? Are we here to just be a facade and just pretend constantly through life? And for me, like again, I reached a point when I was 19 years old when I told my parents, when I came out to my parents, like that was a pivotal moment to just be like, okay, enough. Like I'm done
mhm,
pretending to I'm not. Like it needs to start changing, and it needs to start changing now. And that
mm,
initial moment, and the floodgates open, and now I'm vulnerable to everybody. Like it was still a really long, painful, patient journey of figuring out safe people and feeling things out and trying what works and what doesn't work. And now it's reached a point where now, yeah, I can blog and write fairly seamlessly about a lot of things that 20 years ago would have been like a heart attack, even less. But it's been a journey, yeah, and I'm still learning the process of vulnerability today. Like just because I
mhm,
can write publicly, speak honestly on a podcast about various topics, like doesn't mean that I've completely figured out how to be vulnerable with the closest people in my life because I'm still still learning that even today. Like, okay, what do I share with this person in this group, and how deep do I go? Like, I'm still feeling all
Mm.
that out even later.
Yeah. So advice would you give your younger self? Let's say your 18-year-old self, if you could go back, what advice would you give him about just in general about masculinity?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, if I could take the time machine, I'd like to go back to 12 years old, maybe. Go back a little earlier.
Okay, let's do
Like, especially,
12.
yeah, when puberty hit, and that was just an awkward time for me because I had moved. My dad got a job promotion, and we moved 800 miles away from
Oh
Philadelphia,
wow.
part of the North, to Northeast Georgia, the heart of the South. And it was just like a complete culture shock, and it's just an awful time in my life too. When I'm 12 years old and like I have a face full of acne, and my voice is starting to change, and I feel awkward. I already feel awkward and insecure as it is, but now throw me in a new school with people with weird
Hmm.
accents, and like a whole totally scary thing. And I just was like, yeah, I was scared to tell, and my mantra was, it's better not to be seen than to be seen. And
Hmm.
so that's what I did for years and years and years. And I would prefer not to be seen, because anytime I was seen, I was pointed out that I was less than, and I was bullied, and I was mocked, and
Uh,
here to not be seen than to put myself out there at all. And so I was very gun shy. But if I could, yeah, if I could go back, I don't know, it's hard because I think a lot of that falls on parents. Um, in the school, like I wrote my first book, like I blamed my school pretty much. I went to a Christian school, and like the Christian school did nothing about the bullying and about the isolation and making sure kids were
hmm.
growing in their, like that wasn't really a priority, at least from my vantage point, it wasn't. And so I know it's hard because like I feel like I could go back to my 12-year-old self and tell myself to be more vulnerable or try to talk to my parents more. Maybe to some extent, maybe I could have, because my parents would have accepted me at 12 just as much as they would have accepted me at 19 when I did come out to them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just think it's important for parents, for teachers, for coaches, for people that have this like direct line to youth. Like it's important for them to be aware, to maybe
Mm.
dig a little bit more self-aware and have a little of intuition and just look out for those issues, because they're so prevalent of kids who are, they feel like they don't have safe people, they can't talk to people, and that's really important to have that.
Mm.
But it's a two-way street. Like you have to put yourself out there, but then you also have to be received as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So try to summarize that in like a sentence or two to your 12-year-old self. What would that statement sound like?
That your parents love you a lot, and so you can trust them. It's hard and it's an awkward time. Puberty is not fun, but but if you can learn to just take baby with them, I think that would have gone a long way over the next 7 or 8 years of trying
Mm.
to navigate these hard issues that I was navigating all by myself. Because man, if I could have, I think about that all the time. If I could have been as vulnerable at 12 as I was at 19 or even at 30,
Yeah.
I can't have life would be now. All the extra conversations and friendships and growth that would have happened. Like I kind of mourn for that, my loss of childhood. Like I think
Mm.
I gave on a lot by not being real with people, and I was very real with my journal. And so it's one thing to just talk to your journal and be super vulnerable with your journal, but to include another human being like that
Yeah.
changes the script completely.
I'm not sure if you noticed what you just said there, but I find it beautiful is that vulnerability allows you to experience life, like and
Totally.
and opens the doors from being in shame and in your own isolation. Like,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest change
mm.
in my life, is that all of a sudden it feels like the light switch went on. And before I was just like, yeah, just kind of in a closet, just trying to rummage my way through and try to just make it through the day. It was just survival mode, and vulnerability has turned survival into thrival. And it's now like, okay, now we can
Mm.
nitty gritty and the core and passions and pursuits and fears and hopes and dreams and all these deep things that are so pivotal. And that's what changes the world. It doesn't, we don't change the world by just playing it safe and hiding and going through the
Yeah.
motions. Like when we inspire, I mean, it's been huge to like, I'm constantly humbled whenever I share a vulnerable aspect of my story and I get an email or I get a blog comment or I hear from
Mm.
somebody and it resonated with them and it impacted them in some momentous way. Like that's super humbling and super inspiring to me, to be able
Yeah.
to just share been in my heart or been festering for a while, and to put it out there and then to see it like encourage somebody. That's what makes the world go round. It's been been a huge part of the last few years, and it never really gets old.
Very cool. Well, why don't you are there ways for people to plug in outside of your website? Because I'm going to put a link for your website. I think it's already actually up. What are some ways people can see what you're doing? Maybe listen to your podcast or any of that. So what's going on with all that?
Brothers is on our site, so you can go to yourotherbrothers.com, and so it's pretty easy to dive into whatever suits you. Some people love blogs, some people hate blogs, some people love podcasts, some people hate podcasts. So you can like dive into blog land or podcast land. We have videos that we're starting to put out now more regularly, so we also have a video page as well. And we're on all this too, so you can check out Your Other Brothers on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, and then I exist separately and concurrently with all that too. So then there's all my social media stuff as well. So yeah, I'm sure you'll have the complete package of all of our linkage. But yeah, if you're interested in our stories at Your Other Brothers, if you go to our website, you can just kind of poke around and go on a journey from there.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much for being on number 7, the Man Effect live interview. I really appreciate your heart and what you're doing for men, and I really hope it keeps growing and taking you on a beautiful journey.
Oh man, thanks, Timothy. It was so cool to connect with you a little while ago and to set this up, and I'm looking forward to it, just to be able to share a little of my journey and hopefully inspire someone out there watching. So,
dude,
thanks for it's good talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone who's watching, I'll post all the links and all that stuff later. If you liked what you saw, please share this. It will always help me, and it will help Tom out as well. And let's end with something random. Random fact. I have a mustache tattoo. Tom, go. Random fact about you.
Random fact about me. I don't have a mustache tattoo. I don't know. A random fact. I don't know. I've been to all 48 contiguous states in America. That's random. Kind of boring, but I've touched ground on all. I haven't been to Alaska, Hawaii yet. Those are my last 2 that I need to get to. But
cool.
But I love to. That's like my one thing. I love vulnerability and I love stories, but I also love traveling and wandering and experiencing new things. Like that's another aspect of my being that I love so much.
Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing that fact. All right.
You're welcome.
We're going to be signing off here. Everybody have a wonderful day. Tom, you take care of yourself, and I will be in touch. All right?
Thanks, brother. It's good being here. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.